Very simple, straightforward video today from the Counterfeit News Network. But first, let me ask you a question. Is it possible for a person to support politics, be in and immersed in the realm of politics, supporting the left or the right, and to have not sold your soul, completely trashed your moral compass, crushed it under your foot and threw it in the waste bin? Is that possible? And then let me ask you this question. Okay, just one more question. What is the most evil organization that you can think of on the face of the earth today? And this is part of the situation we got going here in the CNN, around the conference table at CNN, where they're talking to Abby Phillips is pressing Scott Jennings on a particular question. But think about that. Can you be involved in politics and have not sold your soul? Number two, what is the most evil organization in modern day history or in the history of mankind? And I guess the third question would be, does politics offer you anything other than the false left versus right dichotomy? Check this out.
Well, the Fed is obviously independent. It's supposed to be independent, but independence in Trump's head does not exist. He does not understand why a federal government must be independent from himself. He believes that his power and the executive branch's power should dictate what happens with the Fed and with the Department of Justice and with our military, with all of the various things that should be independent.
There's so many things wrong with what she just said, but the Federal Reserve is not a government entity. They make it clear on their own website. They are a privately held corporation owned by executives, and their job is to hyperinflate the currency and dilute the M2 money supply, which means they devalue the product of every American's time and laboring energy and everybody who trades with the US dollar, since it is still the reserve currency. So anybody who trades with it, the way you obtain dollars, if you do it honestly, is you trade your time, your energy, your labor, your thought process so that you can get that. So if somebody has control of the issuance and value of that currency, and the Federal Reserve does, then if they dilute it, then they're devaluing you as an individual. They're devaluing your time and labor, and they are a private central banking cartel, not a government agency. As a matter of fact, they will tell you that no other agency within government, doesn't matter what branch of government you're talking about, the legislative, the judicial, the executive, nobody's got a say in what they do with regard to monetary policy. And this chick right here is trying to say they should operate independently. But listen to the question that Abby Phillips asked Scott Jennings.
Is you talk about, Trump being spooked. It's a little late for Trump to be spooked at this point. We've been talking about tariffs. He has been talking about this for quite some time. The markets are in disarray. We're heading toward a recession. Everybody is saying that this is a terrible thing. And yet for just now, all of a sudden he woke up and he realized, this is a terrible thing for our economy and our country.
I just have to respond to your assertion that the federal government should operate independently of the elected president of the United States. You mentioned the Fed.
The Department of Justice.
You said DOJ. Which is obviously appointed and works for the president.
No, but it's independent. Your laws should not be enforced based on the president. They should be enforced based on the law.
You said the military. Obviously, he's the commander in chief of the military. I'm just trying to figure out what percentage or part of the government that you think should run away from the president.
There are institutions
I'm
that
going
are
to step in
independent.
here because I don't want us to change the subject, okay? We are talking about the independence of the Fed. Do you agree or disagree that the Fed should be independent?
I think the president should be able to
that
render
actually
an opinion about
that is a
monetary
yes
policy.
Or no.
Whether he should be able to fire him is an open
That is
question.
a yes or no question.
But
should the Fed be independent of the whims of any president of the United States?
That is not a yes or no question. The Federal Reserve is a criminal counterfeiting ring. Without the Federal Reserve, we wouldn't have had World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam. All the wars that we have had were funded by the cheap, easy credit system of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve comes online in 1913. What else comes with it? The IRS, the income tax. In 1914, we have World War I. In 1918, we have World War II. The Korean War comes, the Vietnam War comes. You can only fund that if you devalue the currency and if you decouple it from gold and silver. The only real money outlined in the Constitution is gold and silver. The only constitutionally, congressionally recognized money is gold and silver. And yet right now we have fiat currency. We have Federal Reserve notes. They are notes of debt. So should the federal, in answer to Abby's question here, it's not yes or no. The Federal Reserve should be dissolved, and everybody who owns and operates the Federal Reserve should be tried, and they should be jailed at the very least for the rest of their lives. And then we should institute a sound money system that can't be tampered with by a Federal Reserve, by a central banking cartel.
I think the president ought to be able to have
Why
opinions.
can't you say yes or no?
Previous presidents
I think,
Sure,
I
Michael,
think it's
hold on a second.
I think it's an open question where they should be able to fire the head of the Fed. Some Republican senators don't agree.
So, Scott.
But I don't.
all right.
I just think the idea that the president should not have any opinion about monetary policy is crazy.
I'm going to give you a third try on this one. Should the Fed's decisions about how they operate, the interest rates, when they raise or lower them, should they be
raising or lowering interest rates is devaluing or strengthening the money supply, which means they have their hands on the levers of the power to determine how much money will go into the system and how diluted they will make it and how much they will devalue the dollar. Since 1913, the dollar has been devaluated 98, 99%. The answer should be easy for Scott Jennings. We shouldn't even have a freaking criminal counterfeiting cartel known as the Federal Reserve.
Independent of the President of the United States.
Does independent mean they don't take his opinion into consideration?
Independent means no, they don't take his opinion into consideration.
I don't agree with that. I'm sorry. I think the president.
Okay.
I think the president should be able to render an opinion.
I'm going to ask Charlotte, what do you this was.
So he wants a president of the United States to have all that power that no man should have, and no man rightly has. None of this is legitimate. Government is the idea that there are rulers, the few rulers at the top, who tell all the many subjects at the bottom what to do. And those subjects at the bottom, in the elite's mind, they have the obligation to comply with the orders of the elite. And if they don't, they should be punished. Do you really believe anybody has that kind of power? Do you think a man or group of men has more power to tell you how to direct the affairs of your life and how much money they're going to steal from you? You think any man has the ability to do that legitimately? It's illegitimate, it's immoral, it is criminal.
Taken in by the markets, that idea, right, this week. What was the reaction among people who are making money, they have businesses, they are operating in the financial world to this idea that people like Scott believe that the Fed should be listening to the president and act accordingly?
This lady right here should say, everybody at the table should be going, guys, don't we understand? If we've not had any takeaway from 1913, it should be this. The Federal Reserve has devalued our currency. Devaluing our currency means that our time and labor is literally worthless to them. And we will head into a hyperinflationary scenario like they did in the Weimar Republic in Germany and in Zimbabwe, just for a couple of examples. But all currencies that are allowed to be printed out of nothing dissolve into nothing. They're thrown away in the dustbin of history. They are used as toys and paper airplanes by little kids and wallpaper because they're worthless. We need sound money that will retain its value. These people, I don't think that the people sitting at this table right here are knuckleheads. I just think that they are prostitutes who are always laying cover for the Federal Reserve Zio International Banking Cartel. Always. And this idea of, do you think the president of the United States should have power to tell the Federal Reserve what to do? No, first of all, there should be no president who has this centralized authority in the federal government. And number two, there shouldn't be a Federal Reserve Ponzi scheme cartel.
Not what I said. You put words in my mouth. I said, should he be able to render an opinion, and should the Fed take that into consideration?
No.
I think he should be able to have an opinion.
I didn't say anything.
And they should take that into. It shouldn't be the only thing.
I didn't
but
say
he should
anything.
have an opinion.
The president can have whatever opinions he wants.
Yeah.
What I'm asking is whether the Fed should be independent in their decision making from those opinions.
I said, does that mean they can take his opinion into consideration? And I think they should take the president's opinion into consideration. That's not the only thing. That's
let me see if Charlotte has some thoughts on this.
I think it's very clear from the market's response that not just the desired outcome, the fundamental law of nature needs to be that the Federal Reserve, the chair of the Federal Reserve, makes decisions on monetary policy that are based on economic data, not on the whims of a president. And that's very, very clear. And I think, the job of the Fed is complex, particularly in the environment in which Trump has placed Jerome Powell, where you have a threat of slowing growth and increasing inflation due to these tariffs, right? So you have a stagflationary environment that's very hard for the Fed to manage. It is true that some investors probably, if Jerome Powell were to lower interest rates, I'm not going to predict how the market would respond. However, it's very, very clear that the market responds extremely negatively to even a hint that the president might intervene.
There's a direct
intervening and rendering an opinion are two different things.
There's a direct effect here with the American worker that has to do with China and with the stock market that people are seeing every day. Donald Trump ran on being tough on China, and workers and folks in America, they love that talk. They love being tough on China, but they also love getting really cheap stuff from Walmart, and they can't have both at the same time. And I think that's why you see him backing off of that. With the stock market, regular folks don't understand Dows and bonds and all that, but they understand their 401k. And I think that's where the pressure's coming from, is people around there saying, you're hurting your own people. And so you see people backing down.
I think there is an argument.
Honestly believe the president shouldn't be able to render opinions about monetary.
All of this is anti-free market talk. All of this is the government should involve itself completely in the economy because the government knows best. They know how to set the policies. If it was Obama that was in there, he'd have a better policy than Trump. If Clinton was in there, he'd have a better policy than Obama. And we definitely need the Federal Reserve out there printing money, because how could anything hold together if we didn't have a Zio international banking cartel, fiat currency Ponzi scheme, counterfeiting ring determining the issuance and the value of our currency?
You keep repeating.
It's nonsense.
Something that nobody ever said. No one ever said that Trump cannot have.
We're having original thoughts here.
No, Scott. No one ever said that Trump can't have an opinion. The question is, should the Fed act based on that opinion? And I think it's just common sense, right? The Fed, it should be acting based on economic information and data, not anybody's opinion. Trump is not an economist, and as far as I can tell, does not even have a good grasp on how trade works, which is really problematic if he's going to then turn around and start telling the Fed how to do its job.
We don't want Donald Trump to have influence over the operation of the government. I just think it's wrong.
We don't want to have Donald Trump have.
And Scott Jennings would be the first to say, well, we don't want Obama to have his hands on the levers of power in government. It's just left versus right, dog and pony fodder every single day. And that Americans or anybody in the world continues to fall for it just boggles my mind.
Influence over monetary policy. That is how it has worked. That is where the confidence in this system of economics comes from.
That's how it's worked. That's how we've always done things. And if we keep doing the same thing over and over, we can expect a different result. Right, Abby? Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comments section below. Thank you for tuning in to the Disturbing Illusion channel. If you want to help this channel, you can do it for free. Just like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon. I don't know, maybe grab a shirt like this one. Government, Governo Mentis, to control the mind or mind control. Don't let anybody control your mind. I will see you in the next one.